Sue was saying,
Lawrence Jones.
This is just a baseline. Nobody has talked to this family except for police.
It's a foundational interview for the story. Like, you know, when something like this happens, we have no idea what their opinion is. You go in there and you get as much information as you can, and you set a baseline and a foundation, so we have things to even follow up on. We have directions to go to chase the story. Up to this point, we knew nothing. And now at theblaze.com, we have the exclusive interview. You have the beginnings of this coming out, and it's going to air on Wednesday in its entirety. But I mean, you have to have that. You can't. You're starting from ground zero with something like this.
And for that reason, Glenn, I expect to be criticized. That's fine. But I wanted the story to get out. Yeah. I wanted them the opportunity.
You didn't go chase this story. They called you.
Came to me.
Yeah.
Even when they reached out the first time, I didn't call them. I waited for her to call me back. When she was ready, she was going to call me. That's what happened.
So, we were talking here a minute ago. The son went into, so he had set the scene. The father was there. The mother was there. The father and mother are divorced. But the father remarried a white woman. And they've been married for a long time.
16 years.
Yeah. And so they all three parented Micah.
Very close.
Yeah, like there's
Very
no
close.
hassle between the...
Who had custody? The mom and dad, or the
mom?
stepmom?
I think they had. The mom definitely had custody. The dad was very adamant about saying that toward recently, him and his son became very close. And one of the conversations they had was police brutality. And his dad was like, you can't hate all cops. You can't let this get you so worked up. And the dad said, Michael would get so worked up about this, especially after he saw the BET speech this past couple weeks.
What's the BET speech?
With Jesse, I forgot his name, who's an actor.
You know that?
Jesse.
You heard that speech?
It was a story. Anyway,
acceptance speech.
Talking about the movement and all that, and he said, "Son, I
play that. You should listen to that because that seems to be a key here. That's the first.
And that speech went viral. And he said, "Son, there's some things that I agree with that speech, but there's some things that I disagree." And he talked him down, and had that conversation with him, and he was like, "Dad, I just disagree," and even talked to his stepmom about it. And she agreed that, son, there are some injustices. And she continued to say, I agree with Mike. I understand his frustration. But we told him that he can't have hate toward them. And Micah wasn't a hateful person. And they wanted that to be clear. And I even asked her a question, because this is key to this whole story. Did Micah hate white people?
Here's what they said.
Just you, Mr. Johnson, I just want to talk a little bit about you guys' family dynamic. Because it's no surprise. It was a surprise when I walked here, because a lot of the things that's been reported was Micah's hate for white people, and you're his mother and his stepmother, and you've been very emotional ever since I walked in the door, and it's clear that you loved him.
He loved me. He did not hate white people. He loved my family. He had friends of all shapes and sizes and colors. We didn't see that in one another. It was a deep, abiding love. He was a great kid. Very respectful. His mom taught him to say yes, ma'am, and he always did. And I grew up in California, it's a southern thing. So I said, you don't have to say that, but he still did. And he sometimes slipped and called me Miss Donna. But we played, we chased, there was a time he didn't want me to kiss him.
Probably was on the same time with me,
He was, I think, middle school age.
Yeah.
And, I would chase him around the house
Until you got him.
until I got him. I said,
Stop here. I mean, we're seeing.
Listen to.
Yeah, this family seemed to be completely taken by surprise by his actions.
They were clueless to what was happening. And she even said, I didn't go in his room. I didn't go in the room. I didn't know what was in that room. And I asked her at one point as well, after this, is there any clues that you saw? Is there something,
even in retrospect,
different that you would have done? And I know that was tough because who wants to ask that question to a mother who's just had the memorial service that day? And she says, she pauses. She's like, there's nothing I could do. There is nothing that I could have done. And she was I can tell that it hurt her, me asking that question.
Here is a guy who is raised in a family,
A blended family
where dad has married a white woman. They go to family reunions with the white family, and yet he goes out and shoots white cops for black justice. I mean, something is really wrong here.
I asked her, did he hate white people? And her response was, he hated injustice. And I think that's a conversation that...
I'm wondering if this is the Bubba effect. The Bubba effect is the government isn't doing its job. That there is no such thing as justice. They're not obeying their own rules. They're not who they say they are. They're lying to us. And we're not going to get anywhere with these liars.
He hated liars. She continued to say that.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds to me almost like the Bubba effect more than anything else.
And I think there's an interesting dynamic here, and listening to this kind of plays into it, in that, like, a lot of times, because it's called Black Lives Matter, people talk about it as being anti-white people. Wherein it seems like it's anti-police, to be more specific, including black police, and who are constantly the victims of being hit in the head by rocks.
I will tell you, I have a slightly different take on Black Lives Matter since the shooting here in Dallas. Because, were you guys in town during the shooting?
No.
Okay. So there was a lot of things that broke here in town, but I don't know if they broke nationally, where a lot of the people and Ellen and Lawrence were there on the streets while the shooting was going on. And they met a lot of people that were Black Lives Matter, and about half of them were not anti-white, were not kill the police. It was a different attitude.
There was also a debate between the protesters that we played Friday, where one was saying, why isn't this same attention? I'm marching here, but I think we should be marching for the black-on-black crime.
Yeah.
And
yes.
There was a debate.
And there were black people here in Dallas. It was a different debate here in Dallas. It was much more reasoned here in Dallas that makes you go, okay, now wait a minute. I can talk to these people. This is not the same just, kill the, cops are pigs. That I can't talk to. There's no reason there. But this was different here.
Right, and there's always been a split within these organizations, right? There's always been good people that, that aren't doing, and they really care about injustice and aren't being violent towards police officers. Talking about, there are those elements, though, of these groups every single time. And
we ought to be careful, all of us.
Of course, there's a separation.
Careful to separate them.
I think the big problem is the leadership in these organizations. It's more of the leadership than the actual day-to-day people marching in the street. The leaders are after the fame and fortune, and they plant seeds. And some of them are even white anarchists that I've seen in Chicago, when I went to Ferguson, Baltimore. I've been on the ground in all of these situations and brought this coverage to the Blaze. There is a difference between the people day-to-day that have a problem and the leadership.
There's a difference between Democrats in the rest of the country and those who are on the Progressive Caucus. A radical difference. It's not all of them. There are radical progressives around the country, but it's not the same makeup as it is in Washington, D.C. There are those people who are Mitch McConnell and will enrich themselves, are only in it for the, whatever. And then there are Republicans who are not like that, and we don't separate them enough. Real quick, and then we'll pick it up again tomorrow, because there's some really interesting things that I've seen on the list. I have not heard the audio yet, but can we talk a little bit about the Nation of Islam? Because that came out early, that he was a member of the Nation of Islam.
She said no. They laughed. They were like, why do they keep... And the reason why they were laughing was that they made it very clear they hate the media. And they were tired of people putting that up. And she was very upset about them taking pictures off of his Facebook page. She didn't want to open the, photo album of him. She said no, he was a believer. And there was a certain amount of empathy from me, because I'm a preacher's kid, and she was a preacher. And she was like, no, I didn't raise my son like that. No, that's not. No,
well, a lot of Christians didn't raise their
right
To be
children to be
Stevens.
right.
Yeah.
But I think there was still a matter of her still coping and trying to process that's not the son that I raised.
Well, it wasn't the son that raised the trigger on cops either.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And it was, and I'm not saying that this is a sign of it, or that this is proof.
Right.
But the fact that he came back and he stopped drinking and started going down that would lead him. That is an earmark of that kind of philosophy.
Was it his Facebook page that got people believing he was part of the Nation of Islam?
It was a picture of I guess a Louis Farrakhan thing that was on his page that they had posted, and him putting up the Black Power sign. That really got a lot of people speculating on. And like I said,
could have just liked some of the things Farrakhan said.
Right. Well, I had to ask her that question.
Yeah.
Because I just want people to understand that I asked some questions that I knew there was going to be tough, but I just wanted the response for the record that I gave her the opportunity. These are the allegations. What is your response?
Tomorrow we'll get into something really fascinating that I think will lead to an alt-show discussion, and that is they could get his fingerprints, but there wasn't enough of the body to even do a toxology report. They blew him up.
Amazing.
And she had quite a lot to say about that.
She was livid.
And we will get into that tomorrow. And this started a massive discussion before we got on the air today. Both good and bad. There's a lot there that we should talk about, and that'll be on tomorrow's broadcast. Lawrence, thank you so much. And by the way, you can read and listen to the entire clips of what we played today, and some additional stuff at theblaze.com. It's an exclusive